God, literally here I was so scared to like film a book review. Like I've always been so scared to film because I'm like they scare me because like I'm not good with forming words, like putting my thoughts into words, like coherent words or coherent sentences that make any sense. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be reviewing and discussing Cage of Deceit by Jennifer Ann Davis. Okay, noticing how thin it was, it did not disappoint. Now let me tell you why you need to read this book. Okay, if you are a beginner and you have not really ever dabbled in fantasy and you are looking to dabble in fantasy, pick this sucker up, okay? It looks little and it looks like it doesn't hold much, but it holds a lot and it's really great, and I'm gonna explain why. So basically, Cage of Deceit follows a girl named, it makes me so happy. It follows a girl named Alyssa, and Alyssa is in a kingdom that is called Empyrean. And so Alyssa is the crown princess, so she is next in line for the throne. So of course she has to marry a prince so they can form alliances and whatnot. When a neighboring kingdom is starting to threaten everything, like threaten their kingdom, like they're like, you know, invading their surrounding kingdoms, building an army so they can take over Empyrean. And the whole time you're reading this book, you don't know why until you start getting about halfway through. So there's a lot of world building that goes on. I did really enjoy how it ended up wrapping up, which I'll get into the spoilery part. But yeah, so basically with this kingdom that's threatening Empyrean, she has to marry a prince from another kingdom so they can form an alliance and that their army can come together and that they can fight this outside threat. The prince comes from this neighboring kingdom, comes to ask for her hand in marriage and to see if they're compatible. The one thing that I did really enjoy about this book is that her parents didn't like force a prince on her. You know, she got to choose who she wanted to marry, and if it benefited the sake of her kingdom. So the whole time, you know, we're going through this. So you have the love triangle with the prince and the squire, guard, whatever you want to call him. I definitely recommend picking up this book. It has a lot of political intrigue, and it lacks the magic aspect. I feel like when the fantasy genre throws in magic, it gets a little more complicated because you have to understand the magic system and you have to understand where that kind of comes in, whether if having magic and elemental control is a good thing or if it's a bad thing, and then you have to remember where the magic kind of originated from. So this book has more like political, so you have to kind of keep up with the politics of it all, but really I thoroughly enjoyed it. I definitely recommend it if you don't read fantasy. If you haven't read fantasy, definitely pick it up. It's really great. But that's pretty much all I can say for the non-spoilery That's pretty much all I can say for the Do you ever just like accidentally fold your pages? Because that's what I just did. Okay, anyways. So that's it for the non-spoilery stuff. If you haven't read this book, go pick it up, read it, come back. This is the first in a trilogy, I believe, and the second and the third one aren't out yet. Go and pick it up. Go read it, come back, watch the spoilery part because there's a lot of things that went on and a lot of things I want to discuss. So let's go. So if you haven't read it, bye, leave, gone, bye. I am just gonna say this right now. I called it halfway. I called the ending halfway. I called it, let me see. I called it at page 85. I literally called it at page 85. First we open up with Lily fighting crime, and she goes and she gets this thief, and her and her friend Grievik, her secret friend Grievik, they go and they get this thief, and they go and they send him to the guard. We find out a little bit about Grievik. We find out that his brother died because of thieves, and so he's like, oh, I want to be in the royal guard or whatever. Grievik was one of those characters that I was just like, okay, you're there, you're kind of a part of the plot, but I kind of have a feeling you're not gonna make it in the end, and he didn't. One thing that I really liked is that her parents were rooting for her to find somebody that she actually liked and loved, so who she married, that she actually loved him. And I think that we don't really see that in fantasy novels. It's more like, you have to marry this prince. If you don't like it, it sucks. You have to do it for your kingdom. And I think that she kind of made that on her own, where she started like understanding like, hey, I need to protect my kingdom, so I have to marry this guy, even though he's not someone I really, really particularly like. So first we get a little glimpse of the Prince of Fia. At first, it was kind of one of those parts in a book where you're like, why? He was there for 4 or 5 chapters, and then he left, and then his storyline didn't really come into play, really. Like, they had this plan for Alyssa to, they pretty much told him, you can't marry Alyssa, but you can form an alliance with us if you and your armies join together and you pay your taxes or whatever. Like, you can join our army and we will provide you safety from this, from Rusik, the, threat that's coming in. So that's the end of pretty much anything regarding Fia that we get, is at the beginning of the book, where they're like, okay, you can't marry Alyssa, but you can join our army, and we will provide aid for your army as long as you fight with us and you pay our taxes, type of deal. That's all we really get of Fia. And again, this is where all the political stuff comes in, is it doesn't play a big role, but maybe it will in the end. So yeah. So the next part we get to, of course, is the Prince Odar of Fren and his squire and his just entourage comes to Empyrean. So immediately Alyssa doesn't like Odar. So in this part, I'm talking about when we first see Odar, when he first comes to the kingdom, how he's so arrogant and he knows that everybody's looking at him and he's so full of himself. But then when we get private meetings with him, we start seeing his facade kind of fall apart. Things at first, because it made sense. Like, he played the role. Like, he played it good. But when Alyssa was like, oh, he kept looking over, I was like, he kept looking at the squire, and how Jarvik, like, knew more than Odar did. I was just kind of like, looks like switch roles to me. While they're still trying to figure out all these marriage details and whatever, Rusik invades Millennia. How do you say it? Millennia? Like, Melania? Maybe Melania. It's probably Melania, like Melania Trump. Oh my god. I can't believe I just thought that. Anyways, Rusik invades Melania. Whatever. So now they have a hold of two kingdoms already. Rusik is getting control of these kingdoms and is starting to prepare for war with Empyrean. Okay, so basically that's how the politics are working right now and how war is on the brink of happening. Odar's younger brother married the crown prince Justina of Telmina. I think it's Telmina. Or Thelmina. I don't know. And they want to rule Thelmina. They do not want to rule Fren. And Empyrean had this peace treaty with Telmina or whatever. Or Fren had this treaty with them through this marriage. So, through Prince Odar's marriage to Alyssa, they will rule both kingdoms together. They will rule, Alyssa will rule Empyrean, and he will rule Fren. And they'll kind of do it side by side. So then everybody votes and it goes through that they're going to marry. All the while, Alyssa is still not sure if she wants to marry him or not. So literally my next note on here says, page 85, Jarvik's training Prince. But the prince isn't doing so great. That's what I was like, first of all, that's what kind of made me a little suspicious. I was like, okay, well, maybe he's not a squire. Maybe he's like, oh, the captain of the guard, and he's not saying anything. And then, like, I immediately thought Kale, and I was like, Kale from, like, Throne of Glass. And then I was like, but that doesn't make any sense, because the prince couldn't wield a sword. And so I was like, so this is what I said. I said, what if Jarvik is the real prince pretending to be a squire? Like Star Wars when Padme had a fake Padme. Like, literally, me. I got it right. Like, anytime Alyssa would ask him about politics of the kingdom and how they would rule, he would look to him, he'd look to Jarvik, and he would look back and he would say something. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, either you're an idiot or I'm right. And I was right. We learned that they sent spies to Rusik, and her parents have been, of course, up until this point, been keeping things from her. So they finally tell her, hey, you know, it's time for you to start acting like a queen. So they go into this big meeting, she's in it, and the spies from Russet come back, and they're explaining how, you know, they went and they got on the front lines of this army that they're creating, and how everybody was killed. And so it's Alyssa's first, you know, glimpse of like what war is ahead. And so that night she sneaks out, she goes to Grievik again. At this point, everybody, her personal guard knows that she's been sneaking out. So at this point, she has been caught for sneaking out. And everybody, not everybody, but like Merrick knows, her ladies in waiting know. I think Jarvik finally figured it out. So she's again going out to go visit Grievik again, and when she goes to talk to him, they are ambushed by an assassin. And the assassin tells her, I want to meet you alone. Back up a second. When they see the assassin and like they're all trying to fight this assassin to like get him away from her, and he like renders all these men unconscious so quickly, why would you still try? Like, why? Like, I'm not talking about, like, keep going toward him in this moment, but why try to go talk to him? Because in the end, he tells her, I want to talk to you alone tomorrow night. I think it was tomorrow night, whatever. And she goes, and everything keeps going wrong. Like, obviously, it's not going to go right. Like, quit thinking it's going to go right, because this guy rendered so many people unconscious. You think, since you're all badass and shit, you can do it? Like, no. Alyssa also finds out from Jarvik that they are there to see if the alliance will work, and that the only way for them to get married is if she goes back to Friend with the prince and meet the king and queen of Friend. This is when it starts getting a little fishy, and I was like, why would they need to go back just to meet them when they already sent them there? Maybe because they have to go back to explain to her, hey, this isn't the real prince, this is the real prince, because we wanted to see if it was for true. And then she falls in love with the real prince, but he's not the real prince, and it's just like, oh, I called it. But even though I did call it, it didn't like take away like the shock when I find out at the end. Like, I was still like, but I wasn't expecting it. I literally had to reread the end because I was like, wait a second. So the prince is dead, and now the squire's alive, and the squire's not the prince, so I was wrong. And then I reread it again, and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh no. She then walks in on Jarvik and the prince, arguing, and that only, like, at that point, I was just like, you know what, I am totally right. If I'm wrong, I'm gonna be really shocked, because there can't be anything too more serious than that. Unless one of them is, like, being betrayed. But, like, their argument didn't seem like they were betraying her kingdom to another kingdom. You know what I mean? I just thought the prince kicks ass. Like, he fights good. Not the squire. You know what I mean? And I just, like, immediately was like, oh my god, they're gonna be so cute. I'm like, I'm shipping them so. And they get a letter from Rusik to her parents telling them either they surrender or they die. They can surrender and be in exile in a neighboring country or a neighboring city. So before that happened, before we get this letter, we get a little glimpse of Alyssa's mother's kind of birth line before they came into power. So Rima's brother, Alyssa's mother's brother, he had taken the throne from Rima. Him and his wife, they had a kid named Jonna. His wife's name was Eliza. Eliza! Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. And Peggy. Okay, I'm done. We find out that Haman was killed, but Jonna and Eliza were sentenced to exile on this island thing. We then also learned that Jonna and her escaped, and we also learned that Jonna and Eliza escaped a while ago, and everybody, like, they don't even care. And at first I was like, I would be a little suspicious. It's just careless, you know what I mean? I would be suspicious. If I was running a kingdom and some people that I put into exile escaped, like, I would be suspicious that, hey, maybe they're going to try to overthrow me. That's where we get to our next point. We learn of the prince's last engagement and how that went sour. Princess Shailene that was her name that he was going to marry, who Prince Odar was going to marry, she wanted to marry them so they could have Friend's army, and they wanted to join forces. They didn't want to, you know, form this union together, and so, but she made it seem like she was in love with him and that they wanted to get married, but then was like, hey, I need your army, type of deal. So it was a betrayal. That's kind of what leads, you know, Jarvik to be so, like, conscious of, like, hey, do you have real intentions here? I predicted that Shailene was Janna's daughter, and Janna is married to Ruzek. It's like, I literally had it in my mind. Like, I knew that that was gonna happen, and it did. It did. So we find out that Princess Shailene was trying to get Friend's army. Hush! When things start getting out of hand and the assassin has Grievik, Jarvik comes to Alyssa and tells her that they need to go tell the king and queen. So they tell the king and queen, and they're about to have a ball, and so they amp up security at the ball. Me being my predictable self, I was like, something's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen. Even if the security is amped up, it doesn't matter. It's still gonna happen. And so finally, everything comes true. Like, literally everything comes true. Finally, they understand the whole while when they are getting ready to go to war with Ruzek or whatever. Alyssa kept saying this idea that, hey, they might be using this river to get to us, and nobody would listen to her. Everyone would brush her off. And then finally, they get information that they are keeping supplies there, and the whole time I was like, why doesn't people listen? And then at the same time I was like, why are people so stupid? The assassin shows up at the ball, like, go figure, and he's like, okay, you can either come with me, and she's like, I'm not coming with you. I'm gonna cause a scene. So she stabs him, he gets away, of course gets away, goes back, and he kills Grievik. The whole while they're getting ready to take Alyssa back to go meet the king and queen of Friend. But Grievik obviously dies because that's how it had to end. Alyssa gets injured, she heals, and then they start getting ready to go back to Friend. On their way to Friend, her and the Crown Prince Odar are ambushed by the assassin. Go figure. And so while they are trying to get away, Prince Odar gets shot, and Jarvik is trying to fight the assassin. And then we figure out that Odar is not actually Odar. He was Jarvik, and the prince is Odar. So, or Jarvik is Odar. So, when I got to that point of the book, like I said, I had to reread it. At first I thought it had said, I see the decoy had fooled you, as in like the decoy that she had fooled her. I don't know, like, that's literally what went through my mind. But then I was like, wait a second. I was like, decoy. I was like, the dead decoy, but the real decoy. And I was like, yes. So anyways, for me, fantasy books, for a good fantasy book, they have to have a good ending. And even though this one was a little rough in some patches, I did like how it ended because I was right, and I wanted to be right because she confessed her love to Jarvik, and then she was in love with him. Like, thank you. Like, thank you. Sorry if this was a bit rambly and a little bit all over the place. I will try to keep it, you know, try to keep it slow. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and make sure that you are subscribed. Be sure to check me out on anything on social media. And I will see you guys in my next video, which hopefully will be soon. Yay! Alright, bye!